there's no faster way to cripple a brand than when it implodes from the inside. When the people who have the closest look at the things.
Middle management apathy. Yeah. That is
insane.
like whatever decision was made by the auditor was the correct one of food being left at room temperature that shouldn't have for too long. A situation where hand washing should have occurred but did not. Format. There's governance around the cascade of like franchisor asks franchisee to do this, and franchisee cascades to market coach to area coach to restaurant teams. If there's governance on that curriculum, that is like the best way to have continuity.
Okay, should we move on to another one?
I love it.
Okay. I love that. Yeah. We talk about culture a lot, I think, in franchise brands, because culture really is baked into like brand value, right? How people connect and engage with your brand. And if you are a restaurant brand and food safety isn't a part of how you talk about your culture, I think this is your sign to go back, talk to your leaders about it, talk to your operations folks about it, your field reps, your franchisees. Talk to me about our food safety culture, or how we approach food safety in our restaurants. And I think we'd learn a lot. They'd learn a lot from those conversations.
Yeah.
And so thank you for bringing in some real applicable, actionable ways to embed that into the culture.
Yeah. And part of food safety professionals, like a leader like me's job, is to think ahead to the worst scenario.
Yeah.
And that can be destabilizing for some people. So like that is like, a very well brewed, courageous conversation right there. As a good example, for example, is what's going on with our delivery trucks, right? Mm-hmm. Are they locked? Are they monitored? And, I had a conversation with one of our suppliers once, and I said, are they locked? They're like, no, but it goes straight from the plant to this restaurant and the other restaurant, the third restaurant. That's it. I'm like, what do you mean that's it? Well, that's it. I'm like, okay, but what happens? Like, if at this restaurant, the 15 minutes that this door is open while the driver is doing the delivery, someone gets in and steals stuff or alters the stuff. And yes, the risk of that happening is very small, but it can, right? Especially if you're a brand that is, I don't know, let's say recently controversial for all sorts of reasons that I can't even think of right now. Someone might want to retaliate against you and get in your truck and like,
listen, when you're in that number one spot, you have the target on your back sometimes,
correct.
Right?
And people might mean you harm. So you have to think ahead to that worst scenarios. And I know of a brand that I will not name that they had a big food safety crisis. Like, this is a retail restaurant franchise brand, big food safety crisis about 10 years ago. And turns out for like about 1,000 locations they had in Canada and the US, they did not have a food safety team. The food safety format was largely on the shoulders of operations, who did their best, but there was no one kind of speaking straight up to management and saying, we have a blind spot here. And then they got their blind spot served to them really publicly. And it took like 3-4 years for them to recover.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's when they do recover, because some brands never recover. And I mean, especially when there's loss of life and things
Which
like
there
that.
was. Yeah.
Anyway, I know we already picked another question, but I think we could talk about culture all day long, because it's why we show up.
Yeah.
It's and how we show up, right? Okay. This is a good one, because, I like talking
None
about
of them
training.
are bad ones.
What's the best way? I know there's a lot of ways, but what's the best way to make food safety training stick with franchisees and their teams? And I know we just kind of touched on it, but if you had to only give one tip, what would that be?
How to make it stick.
Yeah.
Only one tip.
Yeah.
I would have to say that, again, it's repetition. You have to build a format where repetition happens. So even if you have a food safety training that is maybe not as deep and thorough as someone like me would prefer, at least if there's a system of repetition in place, it pops up once a year or every 3 months in a certain format. There's governance around the cascade of like franchisor asks franchisee to do this, and franchisee cascades to market coach, to area coach, to restaurant teams. If there's governance on that curriculum, that is like the best way to have continuity on this program.
I love that you didn't just say the franchisor has to connect with the franchisee. You literally just layered it through the organization. And I think that's an important part to point out. It's not just talking about it with your franchisees, but internally, in your internal teams, are you building a culture of food safety? Do your managers, your directors, your suppliers also know that there's a value of food safety here? There's a culture of food safety here. And I like that you brought that up because one of my clients reached out to me once and said, Melissa, I have this scenario. I don't know what to do about it because it feels a little icky and weird. But so I feel like I have to say something, but I don't know. I don't know how to do it. And I was like, okay, talk me through it. She was in a restaurant, and these days restaurant kitchens are a little bit more open concept than they maybe were, 20 years ago. And there's some benefit to that, but I mean, it also gives a lot more visibility to what's going on. And sometimes you end up seeing things that you probably shouldn't see. But she went in as a customer and she worked with this brand. And so it was her day off. She was just going in for a drink. And she placed her order and stepped aside and was observing this team member who was by themselves, line up to the door, doing their very best to take orders and make drinks. And she observed this team member take one of the blenders that they use and just spray it down quickly with water before making her drink. And I was like, because that's not clean.
Nope.
It's a rinse. And I said, what did you do? And she's like, I kind of froze. A part of me wanted to say something in the moment. A part of me wanted to maybe this was over a weekend, so maybe contact the business coach that oversaw the store and give the feedback. She could have also filled out a Google review as a customer. She could have done a lot of things. And I said, what did you do? And she's like, I did nothing.
None of those options.
I took the drink that I just paid $12 for. I walked outside and I just threw it in the garbage. And that's why she was having this internal battle.
So days later, she was still thinking about it. She reached out to you. Yeah.
And I said, okay, the question now is why? Why have you not said anything? Why have you not done anything? And she said, well, I mean, we had a couple more questions to go through, but eventually it came out that the reason she didn't say anything and the reason she was nervous to say anything was because the person that she would have had to give that feedback to, which would have been the business coach or the area coach, they didn't have a really great relationship. And in the past, when she had given feedback from visiting restaurants, this person had become very defensive, had taken it very personally, had even gone to other colleagues and said, oh, she was in my store. Like, if she's just a customer, she'd just be a customer. And so there was this tension and weirdness between them, so much so that she was there now grappling with how to say something. Yeah. And it was, we eventually worked through it. And, I'm like, what's more uncomfortable? Hanging on to this feeling of feeling like you're not living in alignment with your values, or addressing the thing? Like, what's, the short-term pain sometimes for the long-term gain, right? So we ended up, working through it, and we practiced kind of how we were going to deliver this message. How did you do it before? What was the reaction? What can we maybe change or make different this time? And eventually she ended up speaking to him and getting the issue resolved and following up with the franchise partner. But I share that story and I share that example because of a couple things. One, there is no faster way to cripple your brand from, let me rewind. There's no faster way to cripple a brand than when it implodes from the inside. When the people who have the closest look at the things.
Middle management apathy. Yeah, that is like.
Is that the word for it? The term?
That's what I'm just calling it. That's what I'm. Yeah.
It is so critically important to not just focus on bringing that culture to life in the restaurants with the franchisees. You have to do it internally. You have to practice what those conversations look like. We want you to point out, these are the steps that you should take if you are in one of our restaurants and you see something, right? And we will have your back.
And practice makes perfect on this, right? So it might take a few rounds of this type of feedback before the person on the other side feels more comfortable receiving it or looks more comfortable receiving it. I agree. I always think of, if I don't raise this, who will, right? Or for example, if that restaurant in a week later was shut down for like gross malpractice or something like that.
Maybe there was a health inspector in line watching the whole thing.
Yes.
Unfold.
And your customers, everyone has a smartphone. They're going to pull it out. They're like, excuse me, what's going on
Or
here?
if somebody recorded secretly. Yeah. Absolutely.
So do you want to be in a situation where like, I was seeing this go sideways a week before this restaurant got shut down and I did nothing, right? If you care about your brand, you're going to speak it up. And if your corporate organization, your franchisor cares about their brand, they're going to welcome that feedback. Yes. That feedback is precious, right? And so you kind of have to get over that discomfort to say it. I do understand how having a previous history of feedback not going well definitely raise the mountain of friction to like decide if you're going to do it or not, right? It's also like rinsing a pitcher is not sufficient, but if that person had only seen like, let's say 10 rats, like then that might have felt more imminent or more scary or more dangerous, and that might have conquered that mountain greater. Yeah. So people are like modulating this in their head. They have their own algorithms, right? Like the problem versus
like, is it that serious?
Yes,
or can it kind of slide?
the mountain, the problem, the gravity of the problem versus the mountain to declare it. There's an algorithm in everyone's head is different about where that comfort is. But I think courageous conversations is a full culture thing. It's not just one person to another. So if an organization signals that it welcomes these and it wants these, then the bar to raise these problems and get to the solution is much easier.
Yeah. And I know from experience and from previous conversations with you that you find yourself in those scenarios sometimes where you're having to have a conversation with someone who there's been tension in the past. There's been misunderstanding. There's been feedback that's been taken very personally or sometimes just completely out of context. How do you as a leader move past that, move through that, and still find it in you to do the right thing?
So back to the concept of the relationship, right? I want to understand that person's point of view. So have to start going in with an open heart. And often that also means that there's a time component to it, right? There's a fair amount of conversations I've had with more like franchisee leaders that they were disappointed, upset, confused about something that happened. Mostly in an audit is what will trigger this. And then they will tell me the whole story, like this is what happened, and this employee did this, and then this other employee did this, and then this happened. Like they're like it's a step by step. It takes 30 minutes for them to explain it, and the outcome honestly remains the same. Whatever decision was made by the auditor was the correct one of food being left at room temperature that shouldn't have for too long. A situation where hand washing should have occurred but did not. Mm-hmm. But I gave the grace to that franchisee leader to explain it to me, right? I validated that his point of view mattered to me, right? That his lived experience was important. He could express it and I was going to receive it. And sometimes then we kind of workshopped a way to do better in the future, like how to train your team, how to explain it.
Comes back to training.
Yeah, it's also, there's many times also I offered to area coaches, like if someone asks you a tricky question, like, okay, but why are cockroaches bad? And you're not sure exactly how to handle it, call me. Yeah. I will load you up with that information. You're going to feel so confident explaining it afterwards.
People. Yeah.
So getting on the other side of a tough conversation and kind of like moving on or getting still something good out of it, I think it starts with respecting the human for what they are, right? They're a business leader. They want their business to work. They don't want their employees to be confused, disengaged, frustrated. And so, sometimes also I've had to do what I consider coaching of those leaders of saying, if all your team members are working with a difficult piece of equipment, right? Like this walk-in cooler, everyone's wonky. Don't put the blame on them. This is your equipment, right? So if you want them to not have this bother on the top of their heads, get this thing repaired or get it replaced.
Root cause.
Yes.
Because even replaying the scenario that client shared with me, the first thing she said was that team member was by himself and he had a lineup out the door.
Yeah.
So he might know it's important for me to wash this with soap and sanitize it and leave it in the sanitizer for a certain amount of time. The question is, why were they by themselves during a peak period? The other one is, why don't you have enough blenders so that maybe they don't have to, is that the reason maybe why?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so maybe there was somebody on break. Maybe someone was coming in a little bit later. I don't know. I was only, that person was only there for a few minutes, 15 minutes. But you should start asking those questions. So even from, again, a training perspective, when you receive that feedback, when somebody says to you, hey, this is what I observed, it shouldn't necessarily always just be pick up the phone and let the person have it. It's being curious, being inquisitive, asking the questions, and giving the space for them to explain, to give context, so that you can, again, go back to root cause.
Yeah. And moreover here, like the values part would have been important, right?
Yeah.
So when push comes to shove, when the other person on staff, they went on break and you don't have enough blenders perhaps, how do you just communicate that to your customer? You're like, I'm sorry, so just give me a moment. I want to wash the blender and give you
no customer is going to say, don't wash that blender.
Because more and more that happens, that the employee is both the cashier and the food prepper.
Yes.
That happens often. A lot. And, you can't plan your micro peaks accordingly.
Always,
So you kind of have to be ready to say that, this is the continuation of our values. Like, no matter what, you will always get a safe drink. And if you have to wait 90 seconds longer to get it, this is, we feel good about this as a company, that this is the choice we're making.
Amazing. I love that we brought it kind of back to yes, training, yes, root cause, relationship, courageous conversations. But again, with the training, it's not just what is food safety risk, but why is it important? Why do we value it?
Yes.
What happens if you find yourself in this scenario? Scenario-based training is great, I think, for this topic.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, and being available, I think, also as a leader to say, hey, if there is a challenge, an issue, a concern, pick up the phone and call me. And if I don't have the answer, I will surely find it for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the conversation and are curious to learn more about franchising, like, follow, share, and subscribe to the channel.